I'm Mike Cavanaugh. I'm the Executive Vice President of Max Digital, and I am here today with Craig White. Craig is the Pre-Owned Director at Asbury Automotive and the founder of Profitable Pre-Owned. Craig, welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
So, but before we get rolling here a little bit, Craig, I've followed you for a long time on social media and LinkedIn. I subscribe to your newsletter. I'm a big fan of yours, and I'd like to get to know you a little bit better. Maybe you could tell me about your background, kind of how long you've been in the business, and kind of how you got to what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, 30. This year is my 35th year in the car business. So,
Wow.
done pretty much everything in the front end of the store. Never really wanted to mess with the back end of the store, but so all the way from sales to sales management to regional F&I directors, general sales manager, and pretty much for the past 6 to 7 years, my main focus has just been on pre-owned inventory acquisition, marketing, pricing, that kind of thing. So it's about 6 or 7 years ago when the opportunity presented itself, and I was really interested in doing it because I was, how a dealership can be. You get the day-to-day grind and desk and deals and all that stuff. I was really ready to give all that up, and because I was really interested in focusing on this part of the business, and it's been great fun the last 6, 7 years. So.
Oh yeah, it sure has. I think there's been a lot of changes in the industry the last 6, 7 years, and the last probably 90 days or so have been the most exciting. Would probably be an interesting word to use, but volatile is probably a little bit better word to use.
Yeah. Wow.
So there's a lot of folks out there that I know have questions. You're on social media all the time and reading probably some of these comments that people have, and you see the kind of the snarky posts a little bit about how much people have to pay over MMR and all this for a vehicle right now, which is the reality, right, that we've got right now. So, looking to an expert like you that does this at scale every day and knows a ton about the industry, a ton about the used car space right now. One of the questions that I'm curious to find out your opinion on and ask you about is, when you're looking at appraising a vehicle, it's like, look at the most basic aspect of this. How do you decide, like, what range you use when you're looking at the data set, when you're looking at, comparing, apples to apples with a vehicle? What type of data points do you look at? How far out do you go to appraise a vehicle? I'm sure it depends on the vehicle as well, but maybe you could help me understand a little bit more about your process and how you look at things there.
Yeah, well, it's, like you said, certain vehicles, require you to go out a little bit further if they're more, a rare type of car, and it's all based on, day supply, and the availability of each individual car in your market, because in my market, it could be completely different than somebody that's in Michigan. So, or any other part of the state. So you really have to make sure that you have a really good comparative set when you're when you're appraising a car. I like at least a minimum of 20 to 25. So, you just have to change your distance and get that dialed in to where you get a really good competitive set. There are cars that will really confuse you. I'll give you an example. So there's a company here in Atlanta that they customize Sienna vans for a handicap. All right, but so they've got all these late model, like 19 model Sienna vans that they've customized and handicap. They got high roofs and everything else. Well, if you're going to appraise that car, it's throwing those cars into the mix. And these cars are priced at like $42,000 and $45,000, which is more than a Sienna was when it was new.
Right.
So you got to make sure. I mean, when I first started looking at these cars, I'm going, there's no way this car's worth this much money. And so I figured that out just by going in and looking at the competitive set, and that's how I found it. And then you basically just had to go in there and remove. I think there was a trigger that I could remove that had handicap access is what it was. And it's those kind of things that you have to really pay attention to. And I see a lot of people that make one of the biggest mistakes I see guys make is they'll start deep diving into options getting really specific about options on cars like, premium plus, navigation. If you start adding each one of those items into every car when you're trying to get your competitive set, you're going to get a really bad competitive set. You're going to needle down too far, and your car is going to end up really being way overpriced. So that's just some of the basics that I try to do every day. Make sure that I get a much broader search. And you can turn the triggers on and off, as you well know, and see if it actually affects the price. Sometimes certified trigger doesn't even affect the price very much.
Right.
So then you got to make sure that you're, because you're still competing with the independents out there that can't certify a car. And you got to make sure that, by adding just those certified cars in your competitive search, does that really make a, sizable difference in the price of the car? Sometimes it doesn't. More than often it does, and it'll bump the price up probably anywhere from around $1,500 to $1,700. But there are those times that it doesn't make any difference at all. So it's really important that you move those triggers around and make sure that the competitive set is accurate in what you're looking at.
Now, there's a lot of people that probably are new to being a used car manager, being responsible for their inventory at their store, maybe recently promoted. They don't have the experience that you had. And, I can remember I grew up going to the auction with my dad, and I can remember the days where we had a yellow book and a black book, NADA and black book in the back pocket. And I think my dad still has a wore out piece in the back of his blue jeans from that book. But, data became a big piece of kind of how we price and appraise cars in the industry. That had a bit of a learning curve for a lot of people, adoption curve for a lot of people. How long did it take you to really learn this? And at what point in your career did you really figure out some of these things where, hey, I don't want to get too granular, some of the stuff you're talking about? At what point in your career did you learn that stuff?
It was about 7 to 8 years ago. I guess, let me see, this is 22, actually maybe a little bit longer than that, about 10 years ago. A lot of the tools like, First Look and Viato and all the other tools that are out there, a lot of them were just coming into market, and they were getting tweaked once they found different data that worked. And actually, I used to use Stockwave or the previous version of it, Auction Genius, before I even had Viato. So that's when I really started getting into it. And I would have and also use the Auto Trader scarcity index, but back then it wasn't integrated into anybody's software. You just had to call your Auto Trader rep and get him to send you the spreadsheet. So that's kind of how I came up with the formula of a high Auto Trader scarcity index value, which, the higher the index, the better the car is, the more searched it is by consumers out there. So I was trying to find cars with real high scarcity index and low day supply. And then once you match those two together, almost every time that car would sell extremely quick and make you a lot of money. So that's, the example I've always given was the first car I found like that was a 2013, I think it was Subaru BRZ. It had a crazy high scarcity index. I mean, it's only a $14,000, $15,000 car, but it had like a 15-day supply. So I started buying these things at auction, and we've had customers lining up at the door before the car even got back from the auction trying to buy it. So it's so it's things like that that you just have to try to use it's just a lot of detailed work and a lot of research that you have to do before you jump on the auction. Even if you're a
stockbroker a little bit, probably, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is. But you have to really put in the time, a day or even 2 days before you target an auction, target cars, get them on your buy list, and then you got to go in there and deep dive and do all the research and make sure you've vetted these cars properly. Because if you just throw up a bunch of cars on a buy list and then dive into the auction the morning it starts, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of
right now, MMR, there's no difference between MMR and retail.
Right. It's one and the same.
Yeah.
So with all these changes in the industry right now, everything that's going on, what have you done to kind of adjust your approach, adjust your strategy, or have you had to change much, throughout the last, 90-day period as, the market went down, came back up, and is almost at a record right now? How have you had to adjust your strategy?
Well, yeah, it's at the highest levels, Mike, I've ever seen, and it's like I said, they're really. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my 35 years of the car business. Cars are bringing so much money, and these guys just keep paying it and keep paying it, keep paying it. What I don't understand is why they're not adjusting their retail prices. So, I mean, they have to be losing money.
Right.
So, I've tried to find other ways to source cars, which obviously the best place to do that is your service department.
Right.
So, yeah, they're and that's always been true, right?
Absolutely.
At the front door have always been cheaper, whether it was 20 years ago or whether it's today. And that's a best practice thing that you have to do, and you have to get, it's hard to get a service drive program started though, because it's
Tremendously.
yeah, it's full time, and you have to have guys in there working it every day. Going in there and just appraising cars and throwing appraisals up on the dashboard and hope they see it and call you, that doesn't really work. So, I mean,
Right.
you have to be actively in your CRM, whatever CRM you use. Every one of them have a mining tool, and you go after that low hanging fruit that you can see. A lot of them like eLeads and the other CRMs. If they bought the car from you, you have all the data already, so it shows you how much equity they have and things like that. So, and they're already your customer, so they're not going to give you a whole lot of pushback. So, and then we've been sending out, we've been doing email blast and that kind of thing, saying, hey, we want to buy your car. And basically, the email that I wrote, I explained exactly what's going on today. Wholesale prices are so high right now, we can't afford to buy cars at the auction. So you might as well come take advantage of it. And maybe you can get a car that you actually couldn't afford 6 months ago, because we're going to put more money in your trade. And with all the rebates and new car incentives that are available, it's, that gap 6 months ago might be closed now. And we've started to see it work quite well.
That's great. Now, kind of going to the auction side a little bit here, right, we've had almost a full digital experience only for the last couple months here. Have you been buying cars online, for many years, or what percentage of your cars is there somebody at the auction bidding on a car versus just looking at CRs, condition reports online, and proxy bidding these cars, or live, simulcast bidding these cars?
I couldn't tell you the last time I went to an auction, Mike. I mean, sometimes I go just to get out.
Right.
The store, just get a little bit of a break, but that's usually if I'm going down watching my own wholesale cars.
Right.
Actually, that was prior to COVID-19. But going to actual auctions and physically buying cars at auction, it's been years since I've done that. So I'm 100% online.
Okay. So now, knowing that you're 100% online, looking at, there's obviously a couple kinks in the process with some of the layoffs that were done at some of these large auction houses, right? Like at Manheim and Odessa, processes are a little bit wonky at some of these places. We've got condition reports are a little bit questionable in some cases, not in all cases. I think for the most part, they've done a really good job given the circumstances. But knowing that, is it hard to tell, exactly what's on these vehicles when you're appraising it? Because, some of these packages on a luxury vehicles in particular can make a pretty big difference if you're trying to buy BMWs or Lexuses or Mercedes in particular, right? Some of these packages can be there, and if they don't have good photos, and obviously the description that you see on an auction website isn't as good as what it would be on one of your dealership's websites, is that been a challenge lately more so than in years past, or what are you finding right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they've been challenged to get the condition reports done as well as they've done in the past. And but as far as equipment, like I said, you got to put the homework in ahead of time. So you just copy and paste the VIN, and if it's your brand, it's pretty easy to figure out what the car's got on it. And
Right.
Yeah, you have to make sure. Now, if you're out buying off-brand cars, then yeah, you got to find a way to get the descriptions. It's kind of funny, and it's different in every auction. Like you said, sometimes under that manufacturer tab, at a Mannheim auction, it's 100% accurate every time. At certain auctions, like Mannheim, Orlando is really good about that. But if you go to one of their other smaller sales, sometimes the manufacturer option tab is completely blank. So you
Right.
can't rely on that 100% of the time. So, and like I said, BMWs can get really confusing because there's and Audis as well. There's so many options on those cars that really do make a big difference. So you really have to put in your homework. It's just not, click and buy.
Right.
You have to vet every single car.
And that's one of the features we recently rolled out was, the availability to pull a window sticker while you're appraising a car. So we know that, the VINDA code is pretty good on some cars. The VINDA code is not useless, but it's far less valuable on other cars in any system, right? The VINDA code can be, it varies based on the make and the model. How important is that to say to somebody in a role like yours, or even a used car manager at a dealership that's trying to buy cars for their one dealership? How important is having access to that information to making, an accurate appraisal, whether you miss it because you don't think the car is worth as much as it is, or you overpay because you think it's worth more than it is? Like, how important is having that access to that data today?
It's really important. And I think that's a great thing that you guys have come up with. Because as far as I know, nobody else has it. So, there are other software or tools that you can get that give you access to that, like, oh heck, I can't even think of
Auto
it.
iPacket.
Yeah, that's it. There you go. Auto iPacket. So, but if you're not
Cool.
you can't get it. So that's and that's what I would do. I would always go into Auto iPacket, and post it up and get the stuff. But that's really a great resource to have, and I think that was a really good idea that you came up with that.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to be mindful of your time here too, but kind of some closing thoughts here. If you're going to give, maybe somebody that's either they're new into the used car manager role, or maybe they're seasoned and they've been in the industry a long time, but they're having a little hard time adapting to the current environment, what are maybe the top, 1 to 3 pieces of advice you give to somebody right now in terms of these are the things you need to be focused on if you're running a used car operation of any size?
Well, first of all is your inventory levels or your day supply. Right now, and that's all changed drastically, and those numbers right now are really scary. So it's hard to gauge because it's a moving target all the time. My suggestion is never stock more than 30 days right now.
Okay.
I used to do 40 days even prior to COVID. I get kind of crazy about the turn. So I've always tried to see how high I can get the turn and push that envelope really, really hard. The highest I've ever got it at any of the stores in the Asbury group was 24. But you got to lean it out. But there's some really big problems you can come into when you start trying to run that lean. If supply dries up, you're going to be in big trouble. So
Right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, I kind of back off of that a little bit. But for somebody that's, the seasoned guys, that they should be able to adapt. They have, if they're not tech savvy, I get it, but there's people that can show you how to use it. I'm pretty tech savvy, but a lot of the stuff when all this stuff came out, I was still kind of confused on. So all I did was reach out to somebody that knew what they were talking about. Guys that train people how to use these tools. Use those people as resources, because they can, with all the different people that I've met in the business, that were performance managers or, success coaches using different types of software. Almost every one of those different people at different stores, I got some little bit, a tidbit of information from that made me better at what I was doing. So if you can, this is probably the biggest thing I can recommend to anybody, whether you're new to the business or you've been in it for a while, is use those guys as much as you can. because they've all been to school, I'm sure like your guys have, and they've been trained extensively on how to use this software. And when you develop a really good relationship with these guys, for auction sourcing or even marketing or different types of ways you can, increase your SRPs and VDPs by just little bitty minor things you can do to your ad or your pictures. If you just get each one of these little tidbits of information, you'd be amazed at how much better you can operate. And that would be my number one thing for anybody.
That's great. That one follow-up question that, you mentioned how important, the SRPs and VDP views are, and really the merchandising aspect. I think so many folks in a used car director role are really focused on, sourcing and appraising and buying the right cars. And I think for years, time to market and the quality of what the ad looks like online was secondary. And even today, I think sometimes it's a bit secondary, but a lot of the focus has been on that lately. Now, I think a lot of folks in your role and similar roles are somewhat becoming digital marketing, savvy or experts in some cases. How important is that piece right now? Not only getting the right cars on your lot, sourcing the right cars, but getting them online quickly and making sure they look good online.
It's actually more important than the buying side. I'm not saying that the buying side is not important, and if you're buying the wrong cars, I'm not sure it's going to really matter whether your description is very good. But the thing is, if you have all the right cars and you have the wrong descriptions, bad pictures, and bad marketing, people are not going to look at your cars, period. So you really should be spending probably 70% of your time marketing the cars, going in and looking to see, why that car is not performing well. If it's got the right equipment, the right color, why are people not looking at that car? It's got to be one of two or three things. The pictures are bad. There's, maybe there was some damage on the car that wasn't repaired before they took the pictures, and you got a big dent in the rear door or something that is on, and the customers see every time they click on it, and they just blow by it. But just things like that. And then, make sure that your descriptions are as accurate as they possibly can. Make sure that all the correct equipment's in there. Make sure you don't have equipment in there that's not on the car, because that'll cause you some big issues. After they buy it all, you're going to end up buying a car back. So it's really, really, really important in the digital world, because that's all people, that's all they look at, really. I mean, is this the car that they want? They have their needs, and then once they make their short list, just like I make my short list when I go buy cars. So it's no different. The more information you can give them and make that search easier for that customer, the better off you're going to be.
Well, this has been great, Craig. I really am happy we got a chance to meet face to face after talking a lot on LinkedIn over the years here. But really appreciate learning from you today, and looking forward to connecting with you again real soon.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Mike. I'm glad I finally got to meet you. I've always looked up to you, and glad we finally got to spend this little bit of time together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you have a good day. Good talking to you.
All right, you too. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.